All right, so Kyrsten Sinema, the corporate ghoul from Arizona, has been largely silent and absent during this entire negotiation process surrounding both the bipartisan infrastructure framework and the Build Back Better agenda. And as I have covered many times on this channel, and which I'm going to reiterate today, it is no secret why she would have not been willing to go out and answer tough questions as to the positions that she has been taking throughout this entire process, basically because every single position that she has wedged herself into throughout these negotiations has been not only massively corrupt, but also massively unpopular with the American people. So it's not a secret why she has been staying mostly silent, but thankfully for her, she doesn't actually have to answer any tough questions from real journalists, because we got this motherfucker here from a local Arizona outlet who basically was creaming his pants, and I'll put the entire interview down below, but this guy was basically creaming his pants in the presence of Kyrsten Sinema throughout this entire interview and refused to ask any tough questions. But I think it's an interesting clip because of the way that she basically portrays herself in this entire process. And so without further ado, let's just go ahead and watch this, and then I'll discuss how absolutely pathetically wrong all of this actually is.
Washington Post kind of stole my word in their interview that is published now about how you are viewed as sort of an enigma in Washington. How, you know, New York Times can write you up in columns, in editorial columns on one page, and then in the next page, the fashion department is writing stories all about you. How do you look at that? And I mean, does it amuse you when you see all of that people they don't really know who you are, and so they kind of conjure up who they think you are?
You know, Mark, like most Arizonans, I don't pay any attention to what they're talking about in the national media. I just stay focused on what matters, which is listening to folks at home in Arizona, working hard and delivering results. I mean, I don't even know what enigma means, really. No one really does. What I do know is this. I'm a straight shooter. Folks know who I am. It's the same person I've always been, and they know that I'm going to go to work every day, work hard, and bring home the results for Arizona families. I'll just keep doing that.
Thanks for taking the time, Senator.
Thanks.
Right, so that was like the last question that he ended up asking, but every single question throughout this interview was that pathetic and that weak. But I mean, listen, even just in that short clip, do you notice how many things that she said that were just blatantly at surface level, completely wrong and verifiably inaccurate? Okay, so first of all, she says, you know, she never changed who she is, right? This is exactly who Arizona voters elected, okay? That is verifiably not true. This is a person who ran specifically on lowering prescription drug prices for the American people when she was elected to the Senate in 2018, and who now has, as we were about to get into, completely backed off of that after receiving hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations from Big Pharma. So yes, you did change who you are immediately when you got into Congress, and you started receiving corporate bribes to then go oppose the agenda that you initially ran on and promised Arizona voters. Then on top of that, she says she is just ignoring the national media and all of this, you know, partisanship that's going on in the national media, and she's a workhorse. She's just really focused on what the issues are that the American people, that specifically the constituents in Arizona, want her to be focused on, okay? Again, completely inaccurate, a complete lie at surface level, okay? You see here, we've had polling data on this the entire time. This was the case with Kyrsten Sinema in Arizona. It was also the case with Joe Manchin in West Virginia, okay? These people hide behind this idea that they are these, like, you know, triangulating centrists who really know what their constituents want, when it's just on the policy issues. When you get into the nitty-gritty specific details of the policies that are actually within these bills, they are opposing not only just some policies within these bills that are generally popular, they are opposing the most popular portions of these bills on behalf of their corporate donors. And then they take a step back and they say, well, no, I mean, listen, you're just buying into the national narrative. I'm just some centrist who's triangulating what the views of my constituents are. No, you see that here in the data. A majority of Arizona voters support the Build Back Better plan. Which version of it? Well, the $3.5 trillion investment plan. And you see here, it is not even close. It is not even remotely close. Arizona likely voters here, 44% strongly support, 21% somewhat support, as opposed to 17% strongly opposed. So we have a net plus 37. Okay, let me say that again. A net plus 37 with the entire array of her constituency that were in favor of the $3.5 trillion number that she completely opposed, okay? And again, it's not just that in a generic way that she is opposing the overall will of the Arizona constituency, right? It's not just that she was opposing the $3.5 trillion top line number. It's that she and Joe Manchin and other corporate Democrats are specifically opposing the most important policies, the most popular policies for the American people. Why? Because some of those policies happen to be the most difficult to overhaul under our incredibly corrupt system that we have here in the United States, where politicians are allowed to do shit like this. Okay, so I've covered this article multiple times on this channel at this point, but here from Salon, big pharma medical firms donated $750,000, nearly $1 million, which I think at this point it is over $1 million, to Kyrsten Sinema. Then she opposed the drug bill, okay? And the drug bill that they are talking about is the same drug bill of Medicare negotiating drug prices that just so happens to have 83% support among the American people, and that includes Republicans, independents, and Democrats. You see here, even 82% of independents and 71% of Republicans. Okay, how the fuck are you going to sit there and pretend like you are this like bipartisan expert on what a bipartisan coalition of the a group of the American people actually want, when you are straight up ignoring what an actual bipartisan coalition of the American people actually want in this policy? Okay, and you're not doing it because you're like above the fray of partisan politics. You're doing it because you just got fucking bribed, okay? So don't sit back and pretend like you are above the fray of this partisan political divide that's happening within the country. No, you are the perfect example of the corruption within the US political system that Americans overwhelmingly despise. You are part of the reason why Congress within the United States has less than a 20% approval rating right now, okay? It's an absolute joke. Our political system is a farce. They don't represent average Americans. They represent corporations and corporate America, and then they turn around and pretend as if like, oh, well, this is just all we could do given the current political state of the United States. We just had to secure that bipartisan win. Well, you know what bipartisanship gets you in the United States Congress and in our insanely corrupt Senate and the House of Representatives? This is what bipartisanship looks like, okay? So here was the original, if you guys remember. I know that this was months and months and months ago that we were talking about, but the original proposal that Biden was putting forward on his hard infrastructure plan, as they are talking about it, right? If we're going to separate hard infrastructure versus social spending plans. Okay, so the bipartisan infrastructure framework, this is what it initially looked like, okay? It was $2.6 billion over 10 years, which again, in and of itself, this was not enough to address the infrastructure needs within the United States right now, okay? I've covered this multiple times on this channel. This would not even cover the gap of what the American Society of Civil Engineers estimates that we need in order to tackle climate change and get our infrastructure up to just a grade of a B+, okay? But this was the original form. Now, this is what we ended up with, okay? Let me do that again, okay? This was the original form. This is what we ended up with. This is what bipartisanship looks like, okay? We go from all of this money that was supposed to be going towards all of these pretty good incentives that would have helped with infrastructure within the United States. We ended up with crumbs. Not even crumbs. I don't even think you could call this crumbs, because the crumbs that we are left with are largely part of this massive privatization scheme that is the reality of the bipartisan infrastructure framework, where a lot of this is just handouts to corporate America. What a surprise, okay? It turns out when you have a collection of corporate Democrats working with corporate Republicans who only represent the interests of corporate America, it turns out you're going to get a bill that doesn't actually address the material concerns of average Americans and instead just addresses whatever the fuck corporate America wants, okay? I know it's surprising, it's wild that that would be the inevitable outcome, but you see it here, okay? This is how our political system actually works. So listen, in a broader sense, and this is something she touched on multiple times in that interview, if you want to go and watch the entire thing, is she pretends as if bipartisanship is something that is going to yield good results for the American people. Well, the problem here is that bipartisanship in the corrupt DC swamp is very, very different than bipartisanship among the American people, okay? This is how they justify it in their insane, corrupt, delusional mindsets that they have as representatives of the United States Congress, okay? This is the mindset that they have. They think that if they get together with massively corrupted and bad faith actors in the Republican Party, that means that it is a good bipartisan win for the American people. That is not what that means. Even if you just take the half-assed, watered-down agenda that President Joe Biden ran on, okay? Again, the agenda that he ran on has been massively cut back already from its current form, and then massively cut back even further by the Republican Party. But even if you take his agenda in the original form, everything that he was running on basically was overwhelmingly supported by the American people. The $6 trillion bill that Bernie Sanders was initially proposing with Chuck Schumer on the social spending plan that they were putting forward, the Build Back Better agenda, that in and of itself was overwhelmingly supported by the American people. Medicare for All is overwhelmingly supported by the American people. A $15 minimum minimum wage is overwhelmingly supported by the American people. Lowering prescription drug prices. Again, you can go down the line on every single one of these goddamn issues. It doesn't matter. Bernie Sanders' agenda in and of itself was overwhelmingly supported by a bipartisan group of the American people. Then Joe Biden's agenda, the same thing could apply. But this current agenda is not what bipartisanship should look like in a functioning democratic political system that is representative of working class Americans and average Americans, as well as the entire body of the constituency that participates in our broken electoral system as it stands right now. But this is what Kyrsten Sinema wants you to believe. She wants you to believe that when she gets together with a handful of other massively corrupt senators, that somehow is yielding a win for average Americans. It's not yielding a win. And on top of that, she says people don't know what enigma means. Okay, that was one of the first things that she says. The guy asks a question and says, people think you're an enigma. They don't know what you stand for. You have the New York Times. They're writing an article one day about your fashion. They're writing an article the next day about how you oppose lowering prescription drug prices. Okay, first of all, nobody fucking asked for the articles about what the fuck Kyrsten Sinema, her fashion style is. Okay, nobody wanted those in the first place. But on top of that, how the fuck are you going to argue that this person who has been an enigma in the sense that she has not been willing to publicly state her positions, we literally spent months of this entire negotiation process just trying to figure out what the fuck Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin wanted out of this bill. Okay, Joe Manchin at least was a little bit more upfront with the corruption and what he was trying to water down throughout this process. We spent months trying to figure out what the fuck does Kyrsten Sinema want? What does she want out of this bill? And it turns out what she wanted was, we can't have any increased corporation taxes on corporations or the wealthy because that will make us uncompetitive, okay, even though every other country around the developed world has much higher taxes, and even the United States in the prime of our economic development and expansion within the United States had much higher taxes that have been since gutted by the Reagan administration and subsequent 5 Reagan administrations that followed up. But I mean, listen, this is what bipartisanship actually looks like, okay? These people are not serious actors. They get up there and they give their corporate talking points, and at the end of the day, again, this is what bipartisanship looks like. All right, it does not yield good results for the American people. It just yields good results, as is the priority for Kyrsten Sinema. It just yields good results for corporate America and the corporations who funnel infinite sums of money into her campaign coffers.